Mom, is that really you? The message read, sent from a TikTok account belonging to a 16-year-old girl I'd last seen when she was 8 years old, sobbing as court officers physically removed her from my arms. Dad told me you died. He showed me your death certificate. We had a funeral. I stared at my phone screen in my tiny apartment, hands trembling so violently I could barely hold the device. Reading these words from the daughter I'd spent 8 years searching for, fighting for, mourning while she was alive and mourning me. What my ex-husband Marcus had done wasn't just a lie. It was a criminal conspiracy to erase me from existence, to collect government benefits in my name, and to psychologically torture the child we'd created together. I wasn't dead. I'd never been dead. But according to the legal system, I might as well have been. The nightmare had started when Lily was 7 years old. Marcus and I had divorced after I discovered he'd been having an affair, one of many, as it turned out. The proceedings were bitter, filled with accusations and counter-accusations. He had money and connections. I had a part-time job and a determination to protect my daughter. The custody evaluation should have favored me. I was the primary caregiver, the one who'd taken Lily to every doctor's appointment, every school event, every playdate. Marcus had been absent for most of her early childhood, more interested in his career and his mistresses than in parenting. But Marcus had something I didn't, a willingness to lie under oath. He accused me of drug abuse, mental instability, endangering our child. He produced witnesses, friends of his who testified to things that never happened. He hired a private investigator who followed me for months, building a file of innocent activities twisted into sinister narratives. The judge awarded him full custody with supervised visitation for me. It was devastating, but I thought I could fight back. I thought the truth would eventually come out. Then, 6 months into the supervised visitation arrangement, Marcus disappeared with Lily. One day they were at his house in Ohio. The next they were gone. No forwarding address. No contact information. No trace. I filed police reports. I hired investigators. I petitioned the court. But without knowing where they'd gone, there was little anyone could do. The custody order gave me visitation rights, but you can't exercise rights against someone who's vanished. For 8 years, I searched. I spent every penny I had on private investigators, legal fees, and internet searches. I checked every database I could access, every social media platform, every public record system. Nothing. It was like Marcus and Lily had been erased from existence. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that Marcus hadn't just disappeared. He'd declared me dead. Using forged documents, he'd obtained a death certificate in my name. He'd created a fake obituary, staged a memorial service, and told Lily that I'd died from an overdose. The drug problem he'd fabricated during the custody battle made conveniently, tragically fatal. He'd collected Social Security survivor benefits in Lily's name for 8 years. And he'd convinced my daughter that her mother was buried in a cemetery she'd never been able to visit because it would be too painful. When Lily's message arrived, I was 43 years old and living in a small apartment in Portland, Oregon. I'd rebuilt my life as best I could. New job, new city, new identity in many ways. But I'd never stopped looking. I'd posted videos on TikTok documenting my search. Updates on my case, appeals for information, moments of raw grief that I shared with strangers because I had no one else. Those videos had accumulated a small following. People who believed me. People who wanted to help. One of those people, it turned out, was my daughter. I found your account by accident, Lily's next message explained. The algorithm showed me one of your videos. You were talking about searching for a daughter named Lily. You showed a picture. It was me. The same picture Dad has in a frame. Except in yours I'm smiling with you. In his you're cut out. I called my lawyer immediately. Not because I wanted to wait before responding to Lily. Every cell in my body screamed to video chat with her right that second, to see her face, to tell her I loved her. But I'd spent 8 years fighting a system that had failed me. I knew that whatever came next needed to be handled carefully. Marcus had resources. Marcus had lawyers. Marcus had spent 8 years building a lie that he'd defend at any cost. I needed to be smarter this time. The reunion happened 3 weeks later. My attorney had coordinated with law enforcement in the state where Marcus was living, Tennessee, as we'd discovered. The fake death certificate, the benefit fraud, the custodial interference. These weren't just family law matters. They were federal crimes. The FBI had opened an investigation. Local prosecutors had issued warrants. And in the middle of it all, I flew to Nashville to see my daughter for the first time in 8 years. I didn't know what to expect. Lily was 16 now, almost an adult. She'd spent nearly half her life believing I was dead, mourning a mother who wasn't gone. She'd been raised by a man who'd proven himself capable of monstrous deception. Would she trust me? Would she want to know me? Would she blame me for not finding her sooner? The meeting took place at the FBI field office, with social workers and attorneys present. It had to be documented, witnessed, protected against any future claims Marcus might make. When Lily walked through the door, I almost didn't recognize her. She was so tall, so grown. She had my mother's eyes and my grandmother's stubborn chin. She was trembling, uncertain, looking at me like I might be a ghost. "Mom, I'm here, baby. I'm really here. He told me you were dead. He told me. I know everything now. And I'm so sorry I couldn't find you sooner. I was so angry at you. For dying. For leaving me with him. Her voice broke. For not being there. I tried to be there. I never stopped trying. I looked for you every single day for 8 years." The social worker nodded permission, and I crossed the room to hold my daughter for the first time since she was 8 years old. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing, this teenager who'd grown up believing a lie. Someone was filming. I didn't notice at the time, didn't care. All I cared about was Lily, real and alive, and finally in my arms again. Marcus was arrested 3 days later. The charges were extensive: Social Security fraud, forgery of government documents, custodial interference, perjury, and a dozen related offenses. He'd collected over $140,000 in survivor benefits using a fraudulent death certificate. He'd crossed state lines to evade custody orders. He'd systematically lied to courts, government agencies, and his own daughter. The arrest was captured on a neighbor's doorbell camera. Somehow, that footage made its way to social media. Within 48 hours, both videos, my reunion with Lily and Marcus's arrest, had gone viral. The reunion video reached 14 million views in a week. News outlets picked up the story. Podcasters analyzed every detail. Strangers who'd followed my TikTok journey celebrated the resolution. The arrest video got even more attention. Watching Marcus in handcuffs, hearing his protests that it was all a misunderstanding, seeing him treated like the criminal he was, something in me finally released. For 8 years, I'd felt powerless. The system had failed me. The law had been used against me. My own daughter had been taught to mourn me. Now, finally, there was justice. The trial took 6 months. Marcus's defense strategy was predictable. I was the unstable one. I'd abandoned the family. The death certificate had been an honest mistake somehow. His lawyers tried to paint the situation as a misunderstanding, a father protecting his daughter from a dangerous mother. None of it worked. The evidence was overwhelming. The forged documents, the Social Security fraud, the testimony from Lily herself, who'd kept journals, who'd questioned inconsistencies in her father's story for years, who'd been systematically gaslit but never completely believed the lies. "He told me Mom died of an overdose," Lily testified. "But he could never tell me where she was buried. He said the cemetery was too far. He said visiting would be too painful. He had an answer for everything, but the answers never quite made sense." "When did you start to doubt?" "When I was 13. I found old photos he'd hidden. Photos of me with Mom where she was smiling, where she looked healthy. She didn't look like someone who was about to die of drug addiction. She looked like someone who loved me." "What did you do with those doubts?" "I kept them to myself. Dad got angry when I asked questions. He'd tell me I was being morbid, that I needed to let Mom go, that dwelling on her death was unhealthy." She paused. "Then I found the TikTok videos. And everything I'd doubted suddenly had an answer." Marcus was convicted on all counts. The sentence, 15 years in federal prison, plus restitution of all the benefits he'd stolen, plus complete termination of any parental rights. He'd claimed I was dead for 8 years. Now, legally, he was dead to Lily. Justice, however imperfect, had finally arrived. Lily moved in with me in Portland. It wasn't easy. 8 years of separation, 8 years of lies. Those don't disappear overnight. She had trauma to process, trust to rebuild, an entire childhood to grieve. We went to therapy separately and together. We learned how to be mother and daughter again, awkwardly at first, then with growing comfort. "I was so angry at you," Lily told me once, about a year after we'd reunited. "Not for dying, I know that wasn't real. But for not finding me sooner. For not rescuing me. I understand. But then I started reading about what you went through. The court battles. The investigations. The years of searching. You never stopped. Never. Dad told me you abandoned us. That you chose drugs over me. That you didn't love me enough to stay. She looked at me with those familiar eyes, my mother's eyes filled with tears. He lied about everything. Everything. He did. How do I trust anyone after this? How do I know what's real? You start small. You pay attention to actions, not just words. And you remember that what your father did says everything about him and nothing about you. The TikTok community that had followed my search became invested in our recovery. They sent messages of support, gifts for Lily, resources for families dealing with parental alienation and abduction. Some of them had their own stories. Parents who'd lost children to similar lies, children who'd discovered truths about their families later in life. We became part of a community I'd never expected. Lily started her own account, sharing her perspective. The journey from believing her mother was dead to discovering the truth. Her videos resonated with other children of parental abduction, other survivors of family gaslighting. I believed my dad for 8 years, she said in one of her most watched videos. Not because I was stupid, but because I was a kid and I trusted him. That's what parents are supposed to be, trustworthy. When they break that trust, they break something fundamental in their children. But it can be repaired, she continued. It takes time. It takes help. It takes a lot of crying and therapy and hard conversations. But my mom and I are proof that even the worst lies can be overcome. 2 years have passed since the reunion. Lily is 18 now, preparing for college. She's chosen a school in Oregon, close enough to visit regularly. She's thriving, still processing, still healing, but thriving. Marcus is in prison, where he'll remain for at least another decade. I don't think about him often. He's not worth the mental space. What I think about instead is all the years we lost. The birthdays I missed. The first day of middle school. The moment she learned to drive. The slow transformation from child to teenager to young woman that happened entirely without me. I can't get those years back. No court ruling, no prison sentence, no viral video can restore what was stolen. But I have Lily now. Really have her. Not just as a memory or a hope or a desperate search, but as a living, breathing daughter who calls me every day, who comes home for holidays, who is learning to trust again. That's not everything. But it's more than I ever dared to hope for during those 8 long years. My ex-husband told the court I was dead. My daughter found me on TikTok. The reunion video has 14 million views. The arrest video has more. But the only number that matters is 2. The 2 of us, together again, rebuilding what he tried to destroy. Some lies are too big to sustain forever. And some truths are too powerful to stay buried. I'm proof of that. Lily is proof of that. And no matter how many years Marcus stole, he couldn't steal the ending. We wrote that ourselves.